Well, the Philadelphia Eagles playoff matchup next week in the wild card round is set with a rematch coming against the Green Bay Packers. The Philadelphia Eagles postgame show right here on Locked On Eagles coming up next.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen and watch each and every day. I'm Louie DiBiase, joined as always by Gino Camilleri. We are brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. They help you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster, so post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions do apply. The Eagles get a final win of the season in 2024, I guess now 2025, over the New York Giants, 20-13, the final score. Tanner McKee rips up the Giants' defense. The Eagles get to 14-3 to close out the year. We will get into that matchup, but the bigger topic is the Eagles' first-round playoff matchup is set, and it will be the Green Bay Packers. And, it was a up-and-down watch. The Commanders and Cowboys game was down to the wire. Same with the Packers and Bears. Simultaneously, actually, Terry McLaurin scored a game-winning touchdown on fourth down, and the Bears kicked a game-winning field goal to send Green Bay to Philadelphia. I don't know if this is the ideal matchup when it comes to the Packers versus the Commanders, but what I will say is this version of the Eagles that the Packers are going to see, it's not nearly the same football team that beat Green Bay in Brazil week 1. I think on offense, it's a much more complete unit that doesn't turn the football over, and you're not going to see the same Eagles defense that was slipping on the field, not tackling well, not stopping Josh Jacobs, getting torn apart in that matchup of Jaden Reed versus Avonte Maddox. So it's a tough first-round game, but the Eagles are a much different football team, and they already beat the Packers this year. So I'm still feeling pretty confident heading into the link next whatever day and time that this game happens.
And hopefully it is a primetime Sunday night or a Monday night game, one would assume, because you're going to get Pittsburgh and Baltimore, which they played on Saturday. Right. So if you're just putting the pieces together, allow both teams to at least have 7 days rest. The Eagles probably play in a primetime matchup on Sunday or Monday night, and that probably would have happened either way if it was with Washington to get that grudge match or with Green Bay in this rematch. But I will say one thing, Lou, when it comes to Washington, when it comes to Green Bay, I think it's a tale of two teams and how the season ended for them. Washington, a team that is healthy, they finish out games when it mattered down the stretch. Green Bay is banged up, man. Jordan Love didn't even finish that game today.
Sure.
It came down to Malik Willis having to go out there and put them in a position to maybe win that football game. Jair Alexander's out for the season. Christian Watson got carted off in that game today.
Yeah.
Is it going to be easy? Absolutely not. We talked about how good the NFC was this year in terms of the playoffs, but I'll say something, Lou. I'd rather play the Packers in the first round than Washington, in my opinion, because Washington, I feel like, is one of those teams, if you struggle to get your feet underneath you in the first quarter or something, that's a rematch, it's a grudge match game, it's an NFC East game.
See, I think personally I kind of wanted it, Gino, based on the heart.
I did too.
I wanted that.
But we got to put our ego aside, Lou. I
Sure,
do like this
fair.
matchup for the Philadelphia Eagles because I like how their run game should succeed against the Packers. I like that Jordan Davis, I mean, we'll talk about him today, but him being healthy, this defensive line being healthy, on home field advantage, not in another continent and not in another hemisphere. This sets up well for the Philadelphia Eagles. And that was some good football down the stretch, man. Hats off to the NFL. They set it up really well for that 1 o'clock window.
Yeah, and again, Washington, Green Bay, it's not like it's a huge difference either way, right? I mean, I think both teams are on a pretty similar tier with similar tier quarterbacks in Jordan Love and Jaden Daniels. I personally like Green Bay's roster a little bit better, but you do make a good point. Like, they are banged up right now. They're not getting to the quarterback that well up front. So Washington, though, at the same time, Jaden Daniels struggled today against Dallas and then was pulled from the game. Marcus Mariota is the one that actually drove down and won them that game.
That's
so
insane to say out loud.
I think I wanted the Commanders. I think they're around the same kind of team as the Packers. It was more, again, for the rivalry, and I hate how they handled things in that last game against the Eagles, so I kind of wanted that revenge. But logistically, I think you make some really good points that Green Bay is maybe even more of a favorable matchup. I think, again, though, the main takeaway for me is that the Eagles won that game in Brazil, Gino, and they just were not the same football team. Like, they were trying to be a pass-first attack. Jalen Hurts was not the quarterback he is right now. He was turning the football over in the red zone, in their own territory. This defense is not even night and day who they were. They were one of the worst defenses in football the first month of the year, including that game, and now they're number one in almost every single category. So I don't think this is a matchup where you can go back to that first game and say you're going to get a lot of the same things. And that's kind of and that's a positive because they still won that game and they were trying to figure out who they were. So I'm still feeling confident it's going to be a good matchup. I will say, no matter which team you got, this is not going to be like a Daniel Jones first round of 2022. The NFC is really good this year, so no matter what the draw was, it was going to be tough.
But the one thing that needed to happen, and I spoke on this on the show last week, they needed to be healthy. They needed to have the guys ready to go for round one, and they are able to do that. The best thing is that Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Saquon Barkley, Jalen Carter, Quinyon Mitchell, Darius Slade, none of those guys had to touch the field today.
And now Dallas Goedert's back, and he knocked the rust off today. I thought he looked really good.
Exceptional out there today. Looked like he was roaring and ready to go. You're 100% right, Lou. One of the things I also talked about was that the defense, how they settled in down the stretch. They only allowed 30 points 3 times this year, Lou.
Incredible.
2 of them were before the bye. One of them was in a different hemisphere.
Yeah.
So, if you're looking at it, this sets up so much better for the Philadelphia Eagles. The offense is going to be healthy. Saquon is going to be rejuvenated. And I think winning the season the way that they did, Lou, and just finishing 2024 the way that they did, as opposed to 2023, and even opposed to 2022.
Sure.
This is a great way to end it. Like, what a way to let the Stars celebrate the depth players going out there and putting on a fun matchup to keep the Giants from
A.J.
winning
Brown
a
getting a
divisional
little
game
power nap
all
during the
season
game.
long. He said he was praying, man. He said he was
I think
praying.
he was sleeping. But.
No, that was a very cool story, in my opinion, this 2024 season, how it ended. And we'll talk about the game as we continue on here in the show. But the final thing I want to say, Lou, if the Eagles are who we expect them to be, the only thing that's going to beat them is themselves. It's those Jalen Hurts turnovers in the red zone. It's just putting yourself in bad field position on special teams. It's the defense not stopping the run and allowing big explosive plays. They're in such a better position than 1 year ago on the calendar. This 2024 team, the way you're feeling about round one is bring it on. Like, let's go. As opposed to last year, it was like, I do not want to play that game at all.
I think because the Eagles have been so good, and we've known for a few weeks now that they're going to be the 2 seed, we've really read into a lot of, okay, what's going to be the matchup? What are the preferred scenarios? But I think that was almost misinterpreted as fear, and we're saying, oh, damn it, we don't get to play the Commanders. Now we have to deal with the Green Bay Packers. Like, no, I think that no matter who was coming to town, yes, the NFC is much better this year than it's been the last few years. You're not going to get, or even going back from 2017 to now, you're not going to get a Case Keenum-like quarterback every single week, or Mitchell Trubisky, who you've played, or 2022, you played Brock Purdy and then Josh Johnson or Daniel Jones. You're not normally going to get those matchups.
That was tough to throw Brock Purdy into that equation there. That was
glad
tough.
You saw the shade, but you're not going to get that. But at the same time, the Eagles are such a dominant football team right now that there is no fear. Like you said, if they are who we think they are, then you should think on Saturday or Sunday or Monday, bring on anybody, and they're going to get the smoke. I mean, I think the Eagles showed this year that they can beat anybody. I mean, how many good big-time wins against good teams they have this year. So there's no doubt at all.
And you're going to have to beat 4 more good teams to go and hoist a Lombardi trophy if you want to do exactly that. And I will say one thing, Lou, and I know the guys in the locker room don't think this way, but anybody listening, if you're like, whew, like wiping your brow like we avoided Washington, well, let's just remember how things work in the National Football League. Like, I mean, could you potentially see them in the NFC Championship? Yeah, that would probably be the only way that could happen.
Yeah.
But who knows this year, Lou? Like, who's the best team in football? Tell me right now. Tell me who's going to win the Lombardi Trophy right this second.
There's another way to look at it, too, is, the NFC's a lot better this year. And, like, Green Bay, Washington, that's not a really ideal first round. But also, when you look at the entire conference as a whole, what's the difference, like, if you play the Detroit Lions or Minnesota Vikings this year? Like, I don't think there's really that much of it. And, again, it shows the competitiveness and the depth of the conference. But there's not really a team, I think, with the Eagles. I'll still say this, and I said this a lot this year. When the Eagles are at their ceiling this year, there's not a team I think that can hang with them. The Lions look banged up. The Vikings are, I think, more legit than I thought they were. But at the same time, the Eagles, I think, are a special football team, and I think they really are heading into this playoff run, the cream of the crop of the conference, especially like you said, with the way they ended the year, the vibes, how even just the depth of the football team just comes in today and smokes a football team. I really don't think anybody can hang with them.
You have to feel very confident, and I believe this team feels very confident going into this playoff run. And maybe the best news of the day, Lou, happened before the game. You come to find out that Jalen Hurts went through walkthrough on Saturday, so it seems like he'll be out of protocol. They're going to have everybody roaring and ready to go. What a great day to win this game where nobody gets hurt, and your quarterback 3 looks awesome. Your depth players look like stars. You take 0 penalties. 0 penalties.
And they were all backups. That's so impressive.
Great team win, great season.
Yep.
To cap off the regular season, I don't think you can ask for a better win than that because they handled what they had to handle. There was a lot of stuff and noise that was going on outside of the building today that I'm sure people were focused on. But to bunker down, know what was going on inside of the Lincoln Financial Field, Nick Sirianni, great coaching job to finish off the season today.
And we'll get into that matchup coming up next. We've got all week to preview Eagles-Packers, but I do think the backups deserve some recognition after a 20-13 win over the New York Giants to close out the 2024-2025 season. We'll get into that coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles postgame show. This episode of Locked On Eagles is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. Growing your small business in 2025, it comes down to how well you can hire. And let's face it, better hires start with smaller, smarter insights. That's where LinkedIn comes in. With the strongest hiring data available, LinkedIn helps you identify the right candidates, giving you the confidence to make the best decisions for your business. I've used LinkedIn Jobs myself. Used to be a sports director at a radio station, had to bring in talent. I can tell you it's a game changer when it comes to hiring the right fit. Small businesses are wearing a lot of hats, so every hire is crucial. LinkedIn gets that. That's why they connect you with the best candidates using data you won't find anywhere else. From unique skill sets and interests to the connections you share, LinkedIn helps you find the right person for the job. In fact, 72% of small businesses, they say LinkedIn has helped them find high-quality candidates. Hire smarter this year. Find your next great hire on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply.
LOEs also brought to you by Rocket Money. Has Rocket Money helped you find any subscriptions you forgot about that you were paying for maybe twice or even 3 times? And they've definitely helped me, somebody who has a scatterbrain. I had so many subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money has made it easy for me to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users who are taking advantage of it and saved over $500 million in canceled subscription, while members save up to $740 a year. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon.
All right, the final Locked On Eagles postgame show of the 2024 regular season continues on. 20-13, the final score. The Eagles take it over the New York Giants to improve to 14-3. The last 3 times the Eagles did win 13-plus games in a season, they did make it to the Super Bowl. We'll see if this year's team can do it as well. And the backups, Gino, it's incredible that these guys were all backups because it looked like the dominant team we've seen all season long, and that started with QB1 this game, and I think it's going to be the QB2 of the future, and it better be. Tanner McKee finishes this game 27 of 41, 269 yards through the air, 2 touchdowns, no turnovers. He looked like a player that was a 10-plus year starter with the ball placement, 2 hard counts, forced first downs. I mean, the vision, the processing, the pocket movement, it was unbelievable, and I think this confirms a lot of our summer takes that he should have been the backup, I think, this year already. And no, critique to Kenny Pickett, who had a good game last week. But I think we've seen the potential of McKee for 2 years now. And after this game, Howie Roseman has to totally invest in this guy as the backup next year. What a performance.
TDT McKee, man, this kid he's really something else. And I texted you during the middle of the game and I said, this kid is able to run an offense, and we have watched so many guys that have just looked completely and utterly clueless behind an offensive line. And we're not just talking in the preseason. Like, we've seen the Clayton Thorsons playing against the 90th guy on the roster, not being able to do just about anything. Tanner McKee was out there against the Giants' defensive starters today, all of who were healthy. I mean, Kayvon Thibodeau's out there. Brian Burns is out there.
Yeah.
Majority of their secondary starters. And Tanner McKee looked electric, man. He is confident. He sees the field well. He's willing to put the ball in spots that it's like, is this guy a 10-year vet?
The
like
anticipation
you said,
throws.
These back shoulder throws. The first throw of the game to Dallas Goedert, back shoulder timing corner route. Everything was perfect, and this is a great problem to have, all this depth. And I mentioned this to wrap up the show last week, that Howie Roseman, man, hats off to him for going out and addressing so many different things and finding a Tanner McKee, for example, and solidifying the depth at the quarterback position. Talk about the offensive line, though, Lou. All of those guys who were backups playing legit starters and doing a phenomenal job of keeping their quarterback 3 upright.
Yeah, no, I mean, that was a big takeaway of this game, too. Not just McKee and how good he looked, but Howie Roseman has built the depth of this entire roster incredibly well. I mean, Jahan Dotson today finishes with 7 catches for 94 yards, and we thought all year, like, man, this might have been a whiff. Howie gives up a 3rd-round pick for this kid, and while it was a disappointing season for Dotson based on the compensation they gave up for him in that trade with Washington, it does look like after today, the way he looked, that maybe this year's lack of production was simply a matter of circumstance, where he's on the most run-heavy team in the league, and he's the 3rd or 4th target, or 5th or 6th in a team where, again, there's not a lot to go around, right? Because of target monsters like Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert when he's healthy, Saquon Barkley, of course, running the ball. Like, Dotson looked good today. Anais Smith and Johnny Wilson made plays. Across the board, I think that's the big takeaway, is it's not just the star power on this roster, the second units, the third units of each position. There are legitimate players on all of them, and they're all young. That's the cool part, is this depth. Like, it doesn't look like any of these guys are going anywhere anytime soon.
Not at all. And I think there's so many individual stories that you can look at from today that people aren't going to remember, but I think if you're a true sicko, you'll find very cool. Like, I think the Darian Kennard moment where he's got 7 Giants on him and it's just him getting... Everybody's trying to bully him, and he's like, "No, you're not bullying me."
Or when he slapped the guy in the head after the hard count.
He Rick James 5 fingers to the face, slapped that dude in the face when he jumped offside there. I think the E.J. Jenkins story is phenomenal. You talk about a player who lit it up in the preseason, who was on the practice squad, who was elevated off the roster. He gets signed to the 53, finally gets his first catch of the season, and you know what that is, Lou?
It's a touchdown.
A touchdown. And we haven't even talked about the defense yet, Lou. I want to start by finishing off the game. Sidney Brown, a year ago, sees his season end, sees his hopes just flash before his eyes, tearing his ACL. And what happens to him today? After an up-and-down game, still has some tackling issues, but plays fast, gets that interception, which he almost had one early on, closes out the game against Drew Lock. The young guys on the defense looked awesome. The Oren Burks of the world looked phenomenal.
He's been great the last
Tristan
2 games.
McCollum, Isaiah Rodgers. I mean, you can't say enough about all of the guys on this roster today.
I was watching the young secondary closely because next year, who knows the future of Darius Slay? I'm like, all right, let's see what Kelee Ringo has. Let's see what Isaiah Rodgers has.
I love Kelee Ringo, man. He's going to be a player.
Another huge hit on punt coverage. He's been their best gunner all year. He had a big pass breakup early in the game on a 4th and 7 play. Isaiah Rodgers looked good, though, too. He had a 51-yard kick return with that speed. He should have had a pick one-on-one just blanketing Malik Neighbors down the right sideline. But again, Sidney Brown's a crazy person and just blows them both up.
Plays like the Joker at safety.
I love Sidney Brown personally, but I'm starting to think I understand why Vic Fangio didn't trust him a little bit this year. The range and speed is incredible, but I think one thing he has to work on this offseason, controlling it a little bit where he wraps guys up. Because there was a swing pass in the second half where he blew the play up, comes crashing down, but broke a tackle because he didn't have the guy wrapped up, and it resulted in a first down. So Sid's a fun player, but I definitely think there's a little bit of the craziness that's got to get reined in. But that pick showed like the sideline-to-sideline speed. It makes sense why Howie Roseman drafted that kid in the third round. So Rodgers, Ringo, Brown, Tristan McCollum had some big hits. I was really happy with the young depth in the secondary today.
You got Jeremiah Trotter Jr. looking good out there. I think Oren Burks might be the best third safety this team has had in a long while, man. Former guy who was playing playoff minutes for San Francisco. All of a sudden, he's in the equation for you and looks good as the green
Two strong
dot.
performances back-to-back weeks for Oren Burks.
He's not a bad guy to have if Bond or N'Kobe, like knock on wood, would go down in this playoff run. But that's the thing, Lou. The depth is there. Something that they didn't have last year where you're saying, oh, when AJ's out, is Quez Watkins going to step up? Well, John Dotson, way to get some confidence today, man. Johnny Wilson, a ton of confidence. EJ Jenkins, Calcaterra, Will Shipley. I mean, players 1 through 53, Lou, everybody has put in something positive to this roster this year. And even though Jake Elliott was hit or miss today, they took some silly special teams penalties where you kick it out of bounds, even though they didn't have an actual penalty that was like within the structure of the game. It's little things to clean up, and you're going to be a really, really successful football team the rest of the way here.
I still, though, just to wrap things up with the game, I can't get over McKee's performance. I mean, you mentioned the processing and how mature and veteran-like this kid looks. It's so in command of the offense, but the just pure arm talent, too. Like, the mobility is not there. But I really think I called him Baby Foles on Twitter, on X today. Like, I really think he can be a long-term backup. Yeah, finally, Howie Roseman has tried this strategy before, the late-round quarterback development project, and it just normally has not worked out. I think it worked out this time, and you need to let that investment be seen through next year. Like, do not trade for a veteran quarterback again. I really think Tanner McKee should be QB2 next year.
Stanford Foles 2.0.
Stanford Foles, yeah. I mean, he's a smart guy. You can tell it, man. You can totally see it. You can totally see it.
Hitting the check down a couple times, man. He loves that corner route against some form of cover 2 or cover 4.
The honey hole shot he had
just
to
absolutely
Dotson.
Delivers it. He is not terrified to throw over the middle of the field as well. They got 3 quarterbacks that you're saying, okay, we have a really good room right now.
That's a good point. There's no fear. I think you've noticed that even from the jump his rookie year in the preseason with all the back shoulder deep throws. Like, McKee does not, like, there's no fear or hesitation in him at all.
Without a doubt, man. And like being in that room with Jalen and having a guy like that to see and lead by example every day. When Tanner McKee goes out there, how is he not going to play free and just like him? Like, what do you have to what did he have to lose today? And he showed that he won himself a QB2 job, most likely for the next couple of years.
And it helped the Eagles tie their top record from 2022 at 14-3. Heading into the playoffs. We will wrap up the postgame show coming up next as we look forward to the playoffs right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. This episode of Locked On Eagles is brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs, they're better with FanDuel because right now new customers can bet $5 and you'll get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. Visit the website and share betting lines around the league with your friends. You can take Saquon Barkley over-under rushing yards. You think the Eagles are going to stick with Saquon as the guy for the offense throughout the playoffs? Or are they going to go with more of a balanced attack? You're going to take the anytime touchdown for A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. You can find that all on FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with, again, $200 in bonus bets at FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and, of course, the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, well, the 2024 regular season has concluded with a 20-13 win over the New York Giants. The Eagles finished the season 14-3. Up next, the Green Bay Packers, and I don't know what day the game's going to be at, Gino, but I would imagine it's a primetime matchup. I think most of the Eagles playoff games since 2017 have been a night game. I'll predict it's going to end up being a Sunday nighter, but I could see Sunday night or Monday night for that one.
Knock on wood for me, everyone. This is CGS
yes,
week. So
everybody knock on wood for Gino.
I will
not
be
Saturday night.
out of commission on Saturday. I will be around some Eagle Scouts. I'm sure we'll find a way to get the info if it does happen on Saturday. But if it's primetime Sunday, I'll be good. Primetime Monday, I will be good. But I will say one thing, Lou. To get from 2-2 to 14-3, and for the second time ever in franchise history to have 14 wins, and that happened 2 out of the last 3 seasons under a guy who you and I'll eat all the crow on this. We look foolish for what we said about Nick.
Yeah, of course.
They ripped off essentially a winless streak outside of one game where your quarterback got hurt.
They were 12-1 down the stretch. It's
how phenomenal is that, man?
And again, I think it's all the more impressive than 2022 because early on there was so much turmoil. That first game against the Packers and the loss against Tampa Bay, the ups and downs with that Atlanta game, and even right after the bye week, like the wins against the Browns and Giants being shaky. For them to turn that around and now look like the most complete team in football or a top 3 team in the NFL, regardless of conference, it's an unbelievable job from Nick Sirianni. And like you said, 14 wins in 2 of the last 3 years. It genuinely does feel like the golden era of Eagles football right now. Like, we know we're watching something special. Like, you can see how special this roster is. And although it is so young and there's more runs to come, like we talked about this in the podcast, last week, like what's the vibe heading into the postseason? Is it Super Bowl or bust? I don't think this team's going away anytime soon, but at the same time, I really hope they can capitalize on the magic they have, like they have in years past, because this football team right now is, again, it's special. This might be the most fun regular season I've had watching this football team. Maybe. I mean, there's been some incredible ones, but I just enjoy so much about the way this football team is made up.
It feels very similar to 2017, which we knew looking back. There are some internal things that may have gone by the wayside that were overlooked because winning cured a lot. I don't think we're going to hear any stories like that. I think anything that was a bump in the road, they didn't let it linger. They didn't allow all these rocks to pile into their fishing net, and eventually the net just let out and everything they caught throughout the year was gone. No, there's any sort of friction, Brandon Graham says something out of place between AJ and Jalen, we're going to work it out in the building because we know we have bigger aspirations. Oh, guys are worried about breaking Eric Dickerson's record. Well, the most egoless guy on the face of the franchise right now, and Saquon Barkley, says we have bigger aspirations. And where does that start, Luke? This started when they hired Nick. It started when the new norm, Doug Peterson may have said it, but Nick Sirianni, Lou, actions speak louder than words. Nick has gotten this team in a point that is historic for this franchise. Not Andy Reid, not Chip Kelly, not Doug Peterson, not Buddy Ryan, not anybody you want that is a Eagles head coach, former head coach. Yet they didn't have 17 games in a regular season, but he's now won 14 twice. And with this core, Lou, that's why it feels a lot different. It doesn't feel like this is going to change much at all moving forward. But there's still a lot to capture now because you look at San Francisco was just in the Super Bowl. Look at what happened to them. They fall off a cliff. You look at the 2017 Eagles. What happened to you? You have to capture this moment right now. You look at
the old Seahawks core, the Legion of Boom. You thought that team wasn't going away anytime soon, and they did make it to 2 Super Bowls back-to-back, but then they could never get back. So that's why it's a balancing act of saying, again, I think this football team, Howie Roseman has constructed a roster that's much more sustainable than the 2017 core. I would even say the 2022 core, at least from a defensive perspective. The offense has been the same core for 3 years now, but overall, he's finally built a team that can be like the early 2022 Eagles that make, or 2020 Eagles that 2000s Eagles, excuse me.
I know what you were saying.
Yeah, exactly. Where you make 4 conference championships in a row. But like you said, in the NFL, things can change so fast, and the Eagles know that. I mean, like Gino said, a different head coach that won a Super Bowl was the one talking about a new norm, and then the following quarterback and coach were the ones that established that. So at the same time, this run, you got to capitalize on what you have right now. And it's not going to be easy. The NFC is good. It starts with a tough matchup against Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers next week. But I really do think this team has the magic to pull it off. I really think they could get a ring. And what an incredible story that would be.
Just want to say thank you to everybody that's listened in this regular season, man.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
It doesn't end now, but to say that we've gotten here and we had all these aspirations and we knew what was on the table, and I think why your sentiment is this is the most fun you've had watching the team. When expectations meet reality and your expectation is to play for big, important games and to lose less than 5 games every year and compete for a 1 or 2 seed, that's when football's the best. When you're competing against the top, that's when the game is fun. The game is not fun in the middle. The middle sucks, and we saw that last year.
And I really didn't think we were going to get there after that Tampa win. Like, the vibe of our podcast after that football game, I really thought
look at Jeffrey Lurie on the broadcast.
Yeah,
man.
like
exactly
last year's collapse and that game, I'm like, damn it, I really thought this was the new norm was coming finally, and like this window was going to be blown wide open. And then for it to actually turn into that result when it wasn't expected, I think that's what made me enjoy it all the more. But again, too, like there was just so many exciting storylines this year that we'll continue to get into. I mean, the players on both sides, from the Saquon Barkley like record run, the big wins against, you know, the Ravens and the Rams, Commanders, the Packers, like all these good football teams, the Pittsburgh Steelers, all that drama that week, and then you just pass all over an elite defense. I mean, the secondary blowing up this year. Finally, me and you've wanted to see a young secondary in Philly, and they pulled that off. There was a great linebacker play. It was such a fun season.
Not done yet, though.
Not done yet.
Done yet. We got
Peter
many
Bukowski's
more great
Packers
things.
up next. That's going to be a fun crossover.
Welcome back, Pete. Welcome to the Thunderdome, my friend. Going to be a big week for the Eagles, and we're not going anywhere.
We've got 4 more shows for you to get ready for the Eagles-Packers playoff matchup next weekend, so be sure to subscribe to the podcast on all podcast platforms and on YouTube as well. We're going to sign off for now, though. Thanks, as always, for making Locked On Eagles your first listen and watch each and every day. For Gino Camilleri, I'm Lou DiBiase signing off. Thanks, as always, for downloading, watching, and listening, and let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.